What is the scariest example of medical negligence you've seen? 1. I had my first child at 21. When he was 4 weeks old, he developed large white blisters all over his lower half, and I immediately took him to casualty. They said it was nappy rash, and I stated that it absolutely was not nappy rash. They told me I was a young and inexperienced mother and should just listen to them. I stated that I was one of 6 children and had 29 nephews and nieces, and that I'd been around kids my entire life. I went home, but my son got worse and I ended up in casualty no fewer than 5 times in 24 hours, each time ending in a massive row. They even threatened to call the piss on me. Fortunately, a doctor finally agreed to see my baby. He had a temperature of 106 and the doctor said he was an hour from death with septicemia. They stripped him, opened all the windows, this was December, and put a fan on him. He was lucky, he survived with no permanent damage, but I've never trusted doctors since. 2. My dad was an extremely healthy guy. I don't remember him ever missing work, being sick, or any of the things my mom and us kids fell ill with. So when he noticed a change to his bowel habits that was listed as one of the cancer signs, unbeknownst to any of our family, he went to the family doc. All his brothers and sisters did, an older fellow that had seen them since they all were teenagers. The doc told him not to worry, probably was just a little blood from hemorrhoids, and told him to buy an ointment for it. A year or so later it was still there, so dad went back and was told to eat more fiber. When he then noticed several months later the stools becoming narrow, he went back again. The doc asked if he had upped his fiber, and when dad said yes, he asked him if he drank enough water. Dad said he drank Pepsi and the doc said he needed water, not soda, so dad started to drink water too and went back home with his worries gone. After all, the doc told him it was nothing to worry about. When finally in 2000, 4 years after his first visit and still having symptoms after doing all the doc told him to do, he asked if he shouldn't have a colonoscopy. He was told he should watch it for 6 more months, and if he still had trouble, the doc would order one. When dad went back 6 months later and finally had the colonoscopy, it found stage 4 colon cancer that had broken through the intestinal wall. Dad had surgery immediately, followed by horrible chemo over the next several months. After that he did okay for a few months, but when he started having bleeding again and went in for surgery, it was found that the cancer had metastasized to most of his stomach and liver. He died in the hospital 5 days after that surgery. I stayed with him non-stop for those 5 days and nights, watching him get weaker and weaker. It was then he told me he had thought he had cancer at his first visit to the doctor, but the doc kept telling him he was being silly. He died 4 days after his 70th birthday in 2001. He was my hero and mentor. A lazy physician who just wanted to tell my dad everything was fine rather than doing his job killed my dad. I try not to think about the if-onlys, as it does no good. Dad was from the generation that thought of doctors as gods. This doctor may have thought his MD stood for minor deity, but his lack of care showed him as the worst kind of doctor. The rest of the story: after dad died, I went back to school and became a healthcare provider myself. And yes, I am known as the one that calls BS on docs that get a little too full of themselves. I think dad is proud of me. 3. My mother had severe stomach pain, acid reflux, for years. The doctor told her it was housewife's stomach and told her to see a psychiatrist. Finally my stepfather made her go see a different doctor. He quickly diagnosed stage 4 stomach cancer. She died in agony and terror a few weeks later. If I wasn't a sane person, I would have killed the evil monster. 4. In 2022, my mom had a second knee replacement. This is a very common surgery, and everything went well. A couple days later, my mom came home. I immediately knew something was wrong when my dad and I were trying to get her out of the truck and into the wheelchair. She couldn't stay awake. She acted drunk and had a hard time using her legs, and she couldn't seem to hold a thought in her head long enough to express it. My dad told me that they had given her something for the ride home, so I just kind of blew it off as the side effects of analgesics. We finally got her in the house and put her in bed to sleep it off. About 3 hours later, I came in to check on her before I turned in, and she was still mostly unresponsive. On a hunch, I checked her SPO2 levels and her SAT was 66. Not good at all. So I, forcefully woke her up and had her take some deep breaths, but her SAT's only corrected to about 86. I called 911, had her taken to the ER where she was placed on oxygen and monitored for a few days. Turns out that, when she was in hospital, she had been given high doses of Talwin for pain, and the drug they gave her for her trip home was gabapentin, a medication she regularly takes, but had not been taking while in the hospital. The combination of Talwin and gabapentin almost killed her by combining to cause an overdose of opioids. Someone dropped the ball. I raised hell up and down the hospital hierarchy. The incident, however, did not go unaddressed. It is still under investigation, but the hospital has made changes about medication interaction awareness and distribution accountability. And more will follow, I am told. 5. I had to have a partial hysterectomy when I was 35 due to cervical cancer. I had 4 children. The oldest turned 14 while I was in the hospital and the youngest was 4 years old. A couple of days after the surgery, I started running a high fever. Really high, but for some reason, when the nurse took it, she said it was normal. She ignored both me and my mom and was rude and dismissive, even though I was burning up and getting very sick. Finally, in the middle of the night, I called my doctor's answering service. The doctor on call was at the hospital in about 15 minutes and wheeled me to an exam room. Turns out, I was septic and could have lost my life. My husband would have been left to raise 4 kids on his own, and my kids would have grown up without their mother if I hadn't made that call. Mom and I heard that doctor yelling at that nurse from all the way down the hall. Never saw her again. 6. One of the most tragic I've witnessed happened to my godmother's son. He was 36, and a husband and father of 4. He started having abdominal pain. When it got to the point where he couldn't stand it anymore, he went to the ER. The doctors did a CT and ran blood work. They told him that he was low on potassium and to go home and eat a few bananas. They treated him as if he were drug seeking. He went home, ate some bananas and took Advil. 2 days later, he was in such pain his wife took him to the hospital closest to their home. It's a different hospital than the one he first went to. In the ER, they could see that he had just been seen at another facility, so they pulled his CT and blood results. What they found was an aortic rupture. He had been bleeding from his aorta for almost a week. The doctors took him back for emergency surgery to repair it. He died during surgery. The doctor was absolutely furious at the other hospital. He actually told us that missing the rupture should not have happened and that we should sue. He requested all the chart notes from the other hospital and went over them in his own time and pointed out the mistakes they had made. He even came to Lawrence's funeral. My godmother obviously was devastated. She even took her gun out of the lockbox to go and deliver her own brand of justice. We were able to talk her down. We sued and are going on year 3 now, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I seriously hope he loses everything, including his house, his car, the change under his sofa cushions all the way down to the horse he rode in on. His quickness to dismiss it all as drug-seeking cost Lawrence's life. Such a waste. 7. My grandson was in a car accident when he was 4. He had surgery for a head wound. His mother and baby sister were hospitalized also, so I came to be with him because they had the kids on different floors. As they were transporting him into a pediatric room, I noticed he had a horrible kind of cough. I'm concerned and asked the nurses moving him to let his doctor know. She tells me it's normal, he just needs to cough it up. We are in the room and they had removed his catheter. So ask if he wants to read or play. He says yes, gets up and he starts to sway. I caught him, carried him to bed, hit the call button. Nurse comes in, Hess making a raspy noise. She says it's normal after being sedated so long. Another family member gets there to sit with him while I go home, shower and pack a bag for the next couple days. As I was walking in my door 15 minutes later, the family called saying he had quit breathing. I rushed back to the hospital. The nurse had insisted she put drops in the eye he had surgery on. His mom and sister were now in room next door. Instead of letting someone calm him, she chased him out of the playroom down the hall. He jumped on his mom's bed. The nurse grabbed him to do the drops, but Hess pale and making weird noise. She starts to walk away. His mom is screaming, Hess not breathing. Nurse, yes, kids do that, and walks out. Everyone is calling for help, but she is talking and laughing on the cell phone, turns her back and walks away. A nurse from 2 halls away heard them and came running. She calls Code Blue and a team worked on him for 18 minutes, finally got him intubated. A doctor spoke to us and said he had been without oxygen to his brain for 20+ minutes. He developed stridor, his throat swole and cut off his airway. So if the nurse would have done what I asked and told the doctor or known what the hell she was doing, a simple shot would have reversed the effects. She delayed emergency response by 4 or more minutes. That can be the difference between life and death. He has a traumatic brain injury, can no longer talk, has 13 now and must wear diapers. I love him with all my heart. There was a lawsuit and during the trial she actually rolled her eyes when asked why she didn't respond when he wasn't breathing, or why she didn't tell someone about the stridor sounds he'd been making all day. Of course the hospital lost the case, but a vibrant, intelligent child will suffer the rest of his life because a nurse on pediatric floor at St. Francis Children's Hospital in Tulsa didn't do her job and then delayed help because she needed to talk her mom in time for break.